If you're like me, you got some old hard drives lying around and you just don't know what to do with them. Today I'm going to show you guys how to set up RAID 0, 1, and RAID 10, and we're going to go through the whole step-by-step process, and we're going to talk a little bit about the technology during the video.
So what is RAID? You may have heard the acronym before, but RAID stands for Redundant Array of Inexpensive Disks. And what it does is use techniques like parity and or striping and or mirroring for the goal of increasing performance and or data reliability. So let's take a look at RAID 0, which is also called data striping. It's completely focused on performance, splitting the workload between two drives or two or more drives at the cost of drive health. Each row on this chart is a stripe, so as you can see, A1 and A2 are a stripe, A3 and A4 are a stripe, and so on. So how is data stored on RAID 0? You may have thought that the data is written like this, where the first drive fills up and then the second drive, but that's not really how it happens. With stripes, data is written to both drives at the same time. Now, the disadvantage of this is there's no redundancy, like I said. If one drive fails, all the data is going to be gone. While RAID 0 falls short on redundancy, RAID 1 does not. At the cost of performance, you could use RAID 1, which just mirrors the data from one drive to another. A two-drive RAID 1 array will have the exact same performance as just one hard drive by itself, as well as the capacity of just one hard drive. Since two drives in RAID 1, only one drive is actually being used for storage. The other one is just copying every single file from that other drive. It's just an exact copy of it. So yeah, both RAID 1 and RAID 0 have advantages and downsides, but RAID 10 is going to take the best parts of RAID 0 and 1 and put them together, using striping and mirroring to increase performance and offer redundancy. Because RAID 10 is combining two RAID levels, it makes sense that you'd need to use double the drives. For a RAID 0 or 1 setup, you can use two drives. RAID 10, you're going to need four drives. And as you can see, drives 1 and 3 are striped in this RAID 10 setup, while drives 2 and 4 are the mirrored drives. And, it may sound bad losing half your storage to mirrored drives, but if this data is important and you want good performance, you could lose over half the drives in a RAID 10 configuration and lose no data. Now that was just 3 examples of RAID levels, and there's a lot more options. I can cover more in the future. But most of the other ones are used for more large data centers. So next we'll go to plugging in the hard drive and hooking stuff up in Windows.
Now, next up I'll just be going very quickly over how to plug in a hard drive. Now, hard drives have two ports you need to look out for. The SATA power cable and the SATA data cable goes there, and they're both L-shaped on your power supply. They're usually a couple kind of bundled together on wires, and they're L-shaped. They look like that, and they plug into your hard drive like that. Now the data cable, same sort of deal. It's smaller than the power cable, but once again, it's an L shape, and it plugs in quite easy. Usually a lot of them snap on, which is good, because if it unplugs while it's going, like when the hard drive's running, that's not very good. And it plugs into a similar shaped port on your motherboard. And that's about it. It's really simple to plug in a hard drive, Next up, we'll be going to Windows, and
Alright, once you're in Windows, it's quite simple from here. You just gotta head to Disk Management, and an easy way to do that, I just like to right click the Windows icon in the bottom corner and click Disk Management, and it pops up like that. So once you're in Disk Management, when you first boot it, when you plug in a new drive, you might have a pop-up to initialize the disk. Just go ahead and initialize it. It doesn't really matter, as the disk will be formatted anyways, and you just got to initialize it anyways for Windows to recognize it. Now, to make a RAID 0 volume, Windows doesn't call it RAID 0, they call it a striped volume, and you're just going to click, not new mirrored, new striped volume, and it's quite straightforward from here. You just add the other disk. Something to note, that was a 500 gig disk. It has to go down to the size of the smallest disk, and that makes a lot of sense if you think about how RAID 0 works. How are you going to have the other almost 400 gigabytes on that 500 gig drive striped if the other drive doesn't have any more storage? So we are going to lose data, but let's just say they're both 160 gig drives for this experiment. Performing a quick format, I'm going to do it. You can do a not quick format if you want. If you have data you maybe want to erase on there. But I might make a video in the future on what formatting really does. Volume label, going to keep it the same. And there we go. It's just that easy. There's some settings you can change if you would like, but if you just want to make a basic stripe volume, that's how easy it is. And if we go to File Explorer, you can see new volume D, 298 gigabytes. It's just that easy. And yeah, to make a mirrored volume, it's going to be a very similar situation. You're just going to click new mirrored volume. The biggest challenge is actually just selecting the other disk in Windows. Same sort of deal. It's going to have to cut down in size of what it could use. That's all right. So this is actually really not going to be efficient if we actually wanted to do a mirrored drive here. I would not recommend using a 500 gig drive and a 160 gig drive, because we're only going to get 160 gigabytes of storage out of this, as I can show you right now. But it will be mirrored, has some redundancy that RAID 1 does not. See, and just like that, there is your mirrored volume. And yeah, that's really it for the in Windows tutorial. So I did some benchmarks on the old hard drives in RAID 0, just an old hard drive by itself and a new hard drive, and you can see that the RAID 0 definitely improved the performance of the old hard drive by itself by about double, which is to be expected if both drives are being written to at the same time. The new hard drive was better than the two old hard drives in RAID 0, which is interesting. If maybe you thought I can just get two old hard drives and put them together in RAID 0, I'll have more storage and it'll be faster. Might not be the case. These drives are about 10 years old. They're Seagate Barracudas. They're 7,200 RPM. So, they were decent hard drives for the time. But yeah, they just don't hold up anymore. So I would, if you're going to get a hard drive, definitely get a new one. Because if you run that new hard drive in RAID, you'll see half decent performances. Though modern NVMe could probably do about 10 times what that new hard drive can do.